This is Populations and Resources Lesson 2.7, Activity 3. This is the first video. There will be two videos in this activity. So if we take a look at our claims, we have established that a change to the zooplankton population could have resulted in more births in the moon jelly population. So that's claim one. So instead of just saying that the births increased, it's that changing the zooplankton population caused the births to increase in the moon jelly population. So now our claims are more specific. And then also that a change to the sea turtle population could have caused deaths to decrease, so fewer deaths in the moon jelly population. So we're going to need more evidence to determine which of these claims is best supported. So you're going to get evidence about zooplankton and sea turtle populations in Glacier Sea, and then you're going to use the evidence to write an argument to support one or both of the claims. But first we're going to need to evaluate the evidence. So in the beginning of the unit, we learned about a whole population, or that in order to learn about a whole population, ecologists often look at samples of the population. So you guys looked at samples before, and we determined that stronger evidence were samples that represented as much of the whole as possible. So the more samples that represent the whole, the stronger the evidence, and a sample that doesn't represent the whole, we consider that weak evidence. So if we look at evidence card A here, we can see that each dot shows a location where data was collected, and this is about zooplankton. So this is the data points where zooplankton were collected. So we can expect that zooplankton and sea turtles can be found throughout the entire Glacier Sea. So in this evidence card A, we see there's 6 dots, 6 locations, and that based on this information, the population was stable and then started to increase around the year 2000. So from 1980 to 2000, it was stable and then started to increase after. So what you're going to be doing is going to be a little bit different than what we've done before. If we were in class right now, I'd be handing you these cards, and I cannot do that in the same way. So what you're going to be doing is you need to really pay attention to what I'm telling you to do right now, because the directions will be slightly different from what you see on the screen here. So what you'll first do is you're going to have to go into Canvas and you're going to have to download the evidence cards into Notability. And the evidence cards will look like this. So then you're going to annotate the cards. So you're going to look at the different cards. So there's 4 cards here. Evidence card A and B are representing zooplankton, and evidence cards C and D are representing the leatherback sea turtles. So you're going to read and annotate each card. So you're going to write how are the samples described on each card different, and then which sample represents the whole population. Best represents the whole population. So you will have this in Notability, and there's some space here. Just write down what you see. There's some space here. Write down what you see. Space here. Write down what you see. So you're going to annotate the card. Again, you're just going to, how are the samples described? So how are the samples here? How are the samples here? So for example, this one, there's 6 samples, 6 locations, and the samples are pretty spread out. So that's what I would write here. And then I would describe what I see here. And then what I want you to do is I want you to put a star next on A or B, saying which one you think of A and B represents the population as a whole the best. In other words, which ones of these cards you think is the best evidence. So write down what you see, how the samples are distributed or collected, and then put a star on either A or B. And that star represents which one you think is the strongest evidence. So then you'll do the same for C and D. You'll write down what you see. So how are the samples described on each card different? And so you'll write that down here and then put a star on C or D, whichever one you think is the strongest evidence, the one that best represents the whole population of the leatherback sea turtles. Once you have annotated cards A and B, and then put a star on A or B, and then the same for C and D, what I want you to do is in the upper right hand corner, I want you to put a 1, 2, 3, and 4. So there's 4 cards. So one card will have a 1, one card will have a 2, one card will have a 3, one card will have a 4. A 1 represents out of all 4 of these cards, which ones you think is the best piece of evidence or strongest piece of evidence. So again, thinking about the evidence criterion, which one has samples that represent as much of the whole as possible? So put a 1 on the card you think is the strongest, and then a 2 on the card you think is the next strongest, etc., until you get to the 4th card, which the 4th card you think is the weakest card or the weakest evidence. So that is what you're doing in this activity. Again, it's going to be a little bit different than it says on this screen here for activity 3. So just follow along with the instructions that I just said. You have to download this from Canvas in Notability and then put the annotations and the stars on the appropriate areas and then number them in the where 1 is the strongest piece of evidence and 4 is the weakest piece of evidence. And please go back in the video if you forget what to do and just follow along as I'm telling you what to do. Just do it as those steps. Make sure you turn this in to Canvas when you're done, and then you need to watch the second video. We're going to talk about this and what sort of implications these pieces of evidence have on if we can choose claim 1 or claim 2. So turn this in to Canvas when you're done, and then watch the second video.